This video will continue from where we left off in our stage 1 video on creating a template. We will show you how to create two text styles and add these onto our paper space layout. We'll create our projection symbol as a block, and we'll show you how to embed our logo here. So a quick overview of what you're going to see in this video. As I said already, we'll show you how to create standard text styles which go on our paper. We'll create a special type of text called a field, which is text that updates as required, such as in the file name of your drawing. We'll show you how to embed a logo in your title block. We'll create the projection symbol as a block, and we'll also discuss W block or right block, where your block or your symbol can be written out to an actual drawing file. We will create a polygonal viewport as a window in model space in order to see our model space geometry. And then we'll show you how to duplicate your layout for different paper sizes and how to resize and stretch your border using the stretch command. And this is a big time saver. So a brief word about text. There are two text styles, standard and annotative, both based on the Arial font that come with AutoCAD. Standard text styles are used on our layouts or paper space, and there's no scaling involved. The height is whatever height we make it, and it's 1:1. Whereas annotative text style, we should use this in model space, where the scale of the text adjusts automatically to suit the viewport scale. So let's go and look at this now in AutoCAD. I'll begin by creating a new drawing based on the template that we saved in our last video. So right click on Start and select New, and I'm going to browse for my template. So go to the folder where your template is and click Open. So we now have a new drawing which is an exact copy of our template from the previous video. So if you recall, we created numerous layers as you see here. Our current layer is layer border. I'm now going to make the current layer text for title block. So I'll make text the current layer, and we're going to put in some text here on this title block here. To help us see what we're actually going to put in, I'm actually going to temporarily insert an image of our title block. So I've dragged it in, and I'll just scale it roughly there. So this is a raster image that we've inserted here. We'll remove this from the drawing. This is currently externally referenced in the drawing, and it's just temporary. So that's our raster image of our title block. Now if we go to the Annotate tab, you'll see the first panel here is to do with text, and if you click on the arrow here, the diagonal arrow at the bottom of this panel, this is one way to bring up the text style dialog box. So as you can see, AutoCAD comes with two standard text styles, one called standard, which we would use on the paper, and one called annotative, which is a text style that scales, and we would use this in model space. The symbol here, which is the cross section of the scale rule that we would have used in the past, this indicates that our text style is annotative and will scale based on the scale of our viewport. So I'm going to select the standard style, and I'm going to create a new style based on that. I'm going to save the style name as Arial, and using the Arial font we can specify the height here, but I'm going to leave this as 0, which means that when I go to use this text style, we will get the option to change the height. If you specify a height here, then AutoCAD will always use that particular height, and you won't get the height prompt. The font is already Arial, and so I'm happy with that. Click on Standard again and duplicate it, create a new style. Now I'm going to create a style called Stylus. Click OK, so that's the style name. And if I go here and click on the drop down, you've got all your fonts. Now if I quickly want to get to where the style I'm looking for, I'm just going to type in the first two letters. So if I type in ST there, stylus BT, and you get a preview here of what the font looks like. And I'm going to apply the stylus font to the stylus style, and I've left the heights at 0, which means I can change these when I use them. If you wished, you could create a style. So maybe let's do this. So stylus, let's create a new style. So save our changes, create a new style, and let's call it stylus 2mm. Click OK. So our font name is still stylus, and I'm going to set the height to 2mm, apply, and before I click close, I'm going to change the current style to stylus. So set current, so my current style is now stylus, and click close. To help with positioning our text on paper space here, I'm going to temporarily change our snap spacing to 1mm just while we're positioning our text. And we don't have our snap icon on paper space, so again, tapping in snap, just make sure our snap is on. So there are two ways of adding text here. You can create multi-line text or single line text. Now a lot of the text we have here is single line text. So if I click on this and F3, I've turned off my object snap, so you can see there that my regular snap, the cursor is moving around there in increments of 1mm. Okay, so click where you want to place the text. Watch the prompts. AutoCAD tells you that the current text height is 2.5mm. If I type in 2mm for the height and hit enter for the rotation angle of 0, I will now get the blinking cursor there, and I can start typing in whatever I wish. So let's type in the word size. If I click in the next area here and type in, so we can keep moving along, because this is what single line text allows you to do, and we can enter all the text. So you just click where you want the text to appear, type in your text. We can move this text later, so if you're not happy with the position of it, we can line it up. And finally, date. Okay, so I've put in 6 text items there using the stylus font. They're all 2mm. If I hit enter, it would take me on to the next line, but if I hit enter a second time, AutoCAD will now exit out of the single line text command. And if I click on any of this text here, you get your quick properties here. So you can see that the text is not annotative, it's left justified, the height is 2, the rotation angle is 0, and you could change the style of this text if I wanted to. So click, it's now Arial. So let's change it back to the stylus again. So quick properties allows you there to very quickly change the text style. If I had used stylus 2mm, AutoCAD would not ask me for the height, it would always be 2mm. So using our grip box there, you can see you've got a grip point there on the left justify our text. So we can move this text around. So there's our first lot of text. Let's put in single line text and say where we want the text to go. I'll say height this time of 3mm, rotation angle 0, hit enter again, and once you see the blinking cursor there, you can type in your text. So if I hit enter there twice, AutoCAD will exit out of our single line text command. So I'm going to change the font for this one to Arial, as you can see there, and the text updates. And if you press escape, you can exit out of that. Now if I click on the home tab here, you can see our text is on layer text title block, and our color is by layer, and our line weight and line type are also by layer. If I want to change my text to use a different style, you can select it from here and specify Arial. You can specify the height of the text before you use it, but you can also change this afterwards. So let's do some more single line text. Click where you wish the text to go. Watch the prompts. Our text height is 3, so hit enter, and rotation angle is 0. And now when you see the blinking cursor, you can type your text. Now I'm just going to put in an imaginary ID number here just to show you what we're going to do next. So you can see here that my name doesn't fit into the area that I want it to fit into. So if I click on this text here, I can change its justification from left justify to fit. So by doing this, and I could have selected the justification, but it's easy to do it afterwards. So if I click on fit there, you now see here that I have a second grip box here on my text. So making sure that I'm dragging this horizontal. You don't want to drag it off the horizontal. So I've got my tracking line on there. As you can see, I can get the text to fit in there without changing the height of the text. So the text will still squash in there within reason. So I'll just position that text there by eye. Now this text is on layer text. So if you'd like your text to be a different color, I can override the text color by specifying an explicit color up here. Now normally when we're working with layers, we keep everything by layer, but if you wish, we'll use this as an exception. So I'll take this text, I'm going to fit it in here. The color of this text is currently set to by layer, but if I go up here to the properties panel on the home tab, I can overwrite the text color for by layer. So here I'm explicitly giving this text a color. It's still on the same layer, but we've given it an explicit color. Now normally you would keep your objects by layer, but we'll just make an exception here. The text is still on layer text, but so we might like to have different color text on our drawing. You can of course copy text. So if I use the copy command here, take this text and move it up here, just copy the text. I'm going to double click on this text, and this text I'm going to replace it with the sheet size. Now as you can see, the properties of this text have inherited the property from the one we copied. So I'm going to select this text, and I'm going to change the justification for this back to left justify, and then I can position it. If I want to change the height of this text, let's make it 4 mil, and again use my grip point there to position my text like that. The scale can go in when you use the drawing, so this will change, the drawing number will change. But I'm now going to show you how to put in what we call a field here, which is updatable text. So for this, I'm going to use multiline text, which allows us to put in a block of text. So I'm just going to draw a window here where I want the text to go. I could just type my text in here, but what I'm going to do here is insert what's called a field. Now you'll notice here when you use multiline text that you have a text editor here, and you've got all your formatting and paragraph tools and so on. So if I were to click on field here, this is one way to do it. This will bring up the field dialog box. There's lots of properties that we can control here using fields. So we'll narrow it down, just select document, And now we will get the fields that relate to document. Select file name and select file name here. We don't want to see the extension, so I'll turn that off, and I don't want to see the path. I'll use title case. So our current drawing name now is drawing 2, and that's what appears here. So I'll click OK on that. So now this is my field inserted here, and if I click off of it, you have now added a field here. We know this is a field because it has this grey background on it, but this is like smart or updatable text, and when we save our drawing, the name we give our drawing will appear here instead of drawing 2. Another property that we could use field for is to put in the date. To do this, we can also do this using single line text. So I click where I want my text to go, hit enter to put in the height, hit enter again, rotation angle, and when you see the blinking cursor, if you go right click, you have an option here to insert field. So insert field, select date and time. I'll select the current date. So you have the date here in days, months and years. So that's okay. I'll go with that one. Click OK. And it puts in the current date. And if I hit enter twice, AutoCAD will exit that, just as if you're putting in normal text. If you want to explicitly give that a different color, you can do that if you wish. So that's text and fields done. I'll now quickly create the projection symbol. If you were to press F7, you can turn on your paper space grid here. So before I create my projection symbol, I'm going to change my snap spacing back to 5 again. So SN, and change my snap spacing back to 5. So I'll start by drawing the circles. I can draw this anywhere. So my first circle is diameter 12. Now you'll see here that I need to change the layer of this. So if I click on the circle here, I can change its layer. We're going to put it on layer work. And I also want to make layer work the current layer. So if I use this option here, make current, I can change the layer quickly using that object. So now layer work is current. And let's draw another circle. Center is at the same center, and our diameter is 6. There's our 2 circles drawn. I'm going to draw a line from the quadrant. So if I use shift and right mouse button and I select quadrant, I can draw. Now turn off my snap here. So I'm going to turn my snap off. So with snap off, I've smooth movement of the cursor there. So I'll draw a line there from the top quadrant point to the bottom quadrant point and hit enter. So this line here now is 12 millimeters long. I'm going to offset it through 15 millimeters to the left. And then I'm going to click on that line again and offset it, and I'm going to change the value here to 12 on this, like so. So when I'm going to draw the rest of this here, I'm going to F3, object snap is on, and if I go down here, I can turn on my quadrant. So now it stays on continuously. So I've turned on the quadrant option now so that I can track then. So again, making sure my tracking is on, which is F11, and I'm using polar. So now I can pick up there on that point there. And similarly, if I wanted to track of this quadrant point, I could have used intersection as well, of course. So just hover the cursor there, drag over, that lines it up for you automatically, and we'll draw our line like that. Trim away the bits we don't want. So you get a preview before you do it. And there's our symbol at the minute. So from the midpoint of this, I'm going to draw a line across there, and we can draw a line from here across to here. These three lines are going to be center lines, so let's move them onto layer center. So on layer center you can lengthen these lines because we want to extend them out 2 mil here. There's a number of ways you could do this. So if I use my grips here, I have the lengthen option, and I'm going to lengthen that out 2 mil in that direction, and I'll do the same here. So I'm just using lengthen, and we'll lengthen that out 2 mil there. So this line now, if you click on it, is 16 millimeters long. Let's click on this and do the same here. So I could also use stretch. You have to be careful when you're using stretch because you can drag it off the horizontal. So we want to stretch it out there 2 mil. Line is now 14 millimeters long. So the safer option may be here just to use lengthen, but either will work. Just drag it. So this is going to be our projection symbol. If you type in LTS, which stands for line type scale, I can change the length of our dashes here. So I'm going to go with 0.3. And now I have my short dashes there for my center line. I'm now going to make this into a block. If you go to the Insert tab here on the ribbon, you've got an option here to create block. Now we have two options here. We can create a block or a right block. The block is only available in the current drawing. If I want a symbol to be available in any drawing, you could write it out as an actual drawing file. So for now, let's create a block. We can always create a right block from this block afterwards. So click create block. Block definition appears here. So give it a name. So our first angle symbol. So the block definition, the first thing it wants to know is the insertion point or base point. So pick insertion base point, click on this icon here, and our insertion point is the point we're going to use when we're inserting it, and we're going to use the center of the circle. The objects in the block are all of these, and it should say 9 objects. And when we create our block here, we have 3 options. Retain will leave the objects here as they are now, as individual circles and lines, and will create the block. This option will convert it to a block on our screen here, or we can delete them. So if I go convert to block, this will also now become a block. So let's click OK. You have an option here, open a block editor. I've turned that, it's currently off, and we don't want the block to be annotative either. So that's it, 9 objects, click OK. And now if I click on this, you see that you now have all 9 objects for our symbol here behaving as a single block, and using the grip point, which is our insertion point, is now going to be at the center of our circle. I'm just going to place our symbol in here by eye like that. So there is my block, and if you hover over it, it tells you what it is. If I go to the insert, you can see your block is here as well, so you could click on that and you can drag your block in there, but we've already used the existing geometry to create a block, so we don't need to do that. So this block is saved in the drawing if you wanted to use it again. So just press escape on that. I'm going to remove this from our drawing. So if you were to type in XR, what stands for external reference, this is our temporary title block that we brought in here, so we could see what we were doing. I'm now going to detach this from the drawing and close this external reference. So now I'm now going to show you how to embed our logo here so that it becomes part of our drawing. So to do this, I'm going to need to open up my logo in an image editing software. So I'm just going to use Paint. So here's our image opened in Paint or whatever image software you use. You can use any imaging software that you have available. So if I go Control A to select the entire image, you can see that we now have a dashed border around it. Now I'm going to go Control C, having selected it. And now if I go back to AutoCAD and go Control V, you have paste. And I'm just going to click OK on that and just drag our image in here. So this image is currently on layer work. I'm going to move it onto logo title block, and I'll look at that in a minute. So let's use the grips here just to temporarily size this. I'm going to use move, and I'm going to move my logo in here. We still haven't sized it properly, just to make sure. We'll just drag it again there so you can see it. So here's our logo at the moment, and if I use the grips here, I can resize it so that the width is exactly 30 millimeters, which is our distance there. So using the top left grip, as you can see there, I'm going to drag it down, and that resizes the width of the logo. We don't want to change the aspect ratio here. If you press Control 1, it will bring up the properties here of your logo, and you can see here that the width is 30. The height is whatever it happens to be for this particular width. So the aspect ratio is locked because we don't want to distort our image. I want to center this now, so I'm going to use M for move. I'm going to move this logo. I'm going to use Shift and right mouse button. So I'm going to select the middle of our logo there, and then I'm going to go Shift and right mouse button again, midpoint, and I'm going to move it on there to the midpoint of the line. If I select this logo, and then if I right click, I'm going to move the logo behind the lines by going center back. So now that puts the logo behind the lines there. Now I'm also going to change the color of my layer here. So go to my layer for the logo here, and I'm going to change the color of this to white. So if I select true color, I'll drag the slider all the way up to the top. So the RGB color now is 255 for all of those are red, green and blue. Click OK on that. Just have to resize my window here, so just close that. So now F7, you can turn your grid on and off. So here's our logo position there like that. So the next thing now, I'm going to make the viewports layer the current layer, and if I were to draw something in model space, so I've drawn some geometry here, I'm actually going to change the layer of this to different layer, so just put it on layer 1. If I go back to my layout, I cannot see this geometry, and the reason for that is we need to create a polygonal viewport here that will display our geometry. So this is like cutting a hole in the paper. So when I'm in paper space layout, on the layout tab here, click on that, go to the layout viewports panel and select polygonal. So here's my polygonal viewport, and I'm going to start here at the bottom left, and I'm going to go around the title block, as you can see there. So I'm just using the mouse wheel here to zoom around and back to where I started, and when I hit enter, you'll notice something strange has happened. And if I double click inside that viewport now, you can see that I can zoom and pan the geometry that I just created there. If you double click outside the viewport, you can zoom and pan your sheet. Another way to get into the viewport here is if you're in paper space, and we know we're in paper space when you see your triangle here with X and Y on it, like your set square on a drawing. Click on paper, and now this takes you into the viewport. I'm going to delete this geometry. It was just temporarily there just to show you. And if I'm in model space, if I want to go back to paper, this is a toggle. So you have two ways, model and paper, or use just simply double click inside the viewport. You are now zooming inside the viewport. Double click outside it, you are zooming the entire paper. What I'm now going to show you is how to duplicate this layout. So quick way to do this is press the Control key and drag this layout. So I'm going to drag it there. You see the little plus on the cursor there, see the black arrow. So release the left mouse button and you've now copied this layout. So I'm going to rename this layout to be A3 landscape. So make this layout active, and of course right now this is not A3, but it's exactly the same as my A4. So right click on A3 landscape and select page setup manager. Let's go and modify, and what we're going to do here is it remembers all our properties you can see there from the previous layout. So it's AutoCAD PDF and the color ACAD.CTB is selected, so which is going to give us our color plot. So we're just going to change our paper size. So select landscape, so 420 by 297. So this updates. If I were to preview my sheet right now, you can see here that we've got an A3 page, but we've got an A4 border, and that's to be expected. So that's the only change we've got to make here. We're always plotting the layout because it's on paper. Scale is 1:1. If you want to take plot transparency, if you had any transparency applied to your hatchings, then that would get captured here as well. So click OK on that and close. If you press F7, you can turn on your grid here, and I'm now going to stretch my border and my title block, and I'm also going to include the viewport in this. So as you can see here, we've got a viewport on top of our border there. Stretch is a command here on the modify panel on the home tab. So stretch allows you to stretch geometry and move whatever geometry is inside in the window. So always use a crossing window here. So I'm going to drag the window from right to left like so, and that is going to select the border there for me, and it's going to stretch the vertical sides here, and the top side of our border is going to get moved. So hit enter. We don't want to select anything else. We're going to lock on to this corner here, and I'm going to move this up. I'm going to turn my snap on here. So to do this in the middle of a command, I'll have to use the apostrophe, and snap, you can just press F9 if you're doing it. So now I'm moving here in discrete steps, so making sure I'm going straight up. So I'm going to drag that up there, 85 millimeters, angle 90, and click. And you can see we've resized our border and our viewport in that direction. Now to resize or stretch my border here horizontally, I'm going to move my logo out of the way here, because this will get resized in the stretch process. So I'll just move it out there to save me having to resize it again. So let's select stretch, and this time I want to make sure that I've got all the entire border in my window here. So it's a crossing window from right to left. Click, hit enter. The base point is the bottom corner here, and let's just drag this horizontally, and I'll drag that across there 125 millimeters. Okay, so now we've resized our border and our viewport, as you can see there, so we get 2 for the price of 1. Let's move our logo, and I'm going to use midpoint, so I'm using shift and right mouse button, and I'll use shift and right mouse button again, and I'll drop that in there like that. So now there's our A3 landscape page. Of course, I need to change the size of my text here, so I'll just double click on the text there, change the 4 to a 3. So there's my A3 sheet. So we've got 2 layouts here, one for A4 landscape and one for A3 landscape. And you can duplicate these layouts exactly as I showed you there using the control key, or you can also do it by right clicking and use move or copy, and then tick the box to create a copy. So if I wanted to duplicate that A3 one, I could click create a copy, select the one I want to duplicate, and move to the end and click OK. So now we've duplicated that layout, and then you could maybe change this to portrait if you needed to create a portrait A3, and so on. So let's save our template here. So we would go File, Save As, change the file of type to DWT. AutoCAD wants you to save in here in the templates folder. We don't want to save there, so you need to browse to your templates folder. This is the template that we saved the last day. So let's update this now. And I'll just say with A4 layouts. Click Save. Click OK on this. You can give a little description here if you wish. Click OK. So we've just saved our title block here. I'm going to set the current layer back to layer work. So if you look down here at the title block, you'll notice that whatever name I've given to the file, it appears down here now in my title block. Now if I wanted to use this template, I would have to first of all close it. So close our template and then go File, New. So I'll just close my template here again, click Save again just to be sure. So that's my template saved, and that's it. So there you have it. We'll now use this template when we're creating all our drawings going forward, and as you can see, it is big time saver. Thanks very much for watching, and see you in the next one.